You're on.
All right, I'd like to call to order this special meeting of the Brookfield Board of Finance for Monday, March 18th. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Steve, we'll start with you. We gave you some homework assignments.
Okay, the biggest one was your 500,000 gallon oil tank.
500K oil tank, yeah.
Yeah, it's a 10,000 K, $500,000, and there was some concern as whether that 500,000 was a legitimate quote. So we talked to Casey and Dan over in the schools. This is a 10,000 gallon tank. It is under the parking lot. We did some further research. They talked to the consultant. The consultant was pretty confident. Marcia was able to talk to another town who's doing exactly the same thing.
Casey talked to them.
We could say who it was we talked to?
No, but Casey was the one that talked to them.
Casey talked to them. I don't know, it's a town very close to us. They are doing exactly the same thing, and their current quote is 600,000. And they're removing a 10,000 gallon tank in a school parking lot. Almost exactly the same thing. Their first quote they got was 125,000 just to take the tank out of the ground. This is 600,000 if there is no leakage. So I think the 500,000. Now, these are quotes they've received, not hard bids, but just to get a feel for it. So I think we're pretty comfortable that it's in the right range because they've talked to contractors,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
On docks, we had a conversation with docks. The docks we have we couldn't look at them today because they're buried in a warehouse with a bunch of other docks. But the people who take the docks out for us did have a condition report. They said the docks are not in great shape, but if we did some work to them, we could probably get one more year out of them for the swim team. He raised a concern that we hadn't thought of before, zebra mussels.
Oh,
If zebra mussels start climbing up all the pilings and growing on docks, I don't know if you've had an experience with zebra mussels.
Yeah.
They're like razors.
Yeah.
So for swimming, when kids swim in, flip, turn, and come out, we'd have to scrape those docks, I don't know how often, to keep zebra mussels off of them.
But that's a perpetual problem with Candlewood Lake,
It's,
Lillilona.
yeah, they're already in Lillilona.
Yeah.
We've been working really hard to keep them out of Candlewood. They have been found in Candlewood, at small quantities. It's really, really hard to keep them out because their little baby mussels will sit in the bilges of boats. People turn on their bilge pump, shoot it out. So I think we're good with the docks right now. Let's leave them for the 1 year. If we have to spend a few thousand to get them in operable, safe condition, that's what we should do. And then have a more considered approach next year and a little more time to think about what we want to do. Does that make sense, everyone? Is there anything,
The truck, 87,000, I thought, or something, excavator.
I'm sorry, say again?
It was an excavator or a truck, what do we have?
So we have two things, we have Park and Rec's truck, and then we
Yeah.
have the
The
mini
450?
excavator for, yeah.
Yeah, I talked to Ralph Tedesco about the mini excavator, and again, they said that they rented it, I think, what was it, 6 times in the past year. He said they would use it between 12 and 20 times if they could, right? They only go rent it when they really can't get in some spot, but they would use it much more often if they had it. He said the disadvantage for us in renting is obviously you got 2 guys driving down, picking it up. That's an hour and a half. You got to drop it back off. Those are hours we're paying for also. Parks and Rec would be using it also. How many days varies by year. Some years they'd probably use it 5 to 10, sometimes maybe more. It's the sort of thing, once you get it, you say, oh, this works great. And they use it more. So that's still up in the air. I think, they wanted the mini excavator more than they wanted the backhoe. They thought they could, remember what Ralph said? They took the backhoe out. So that's a decision that needs to be made. And then you were gonna add, you wanted, if we kept renting the mini excavator, you wanted to put an additional 6,000 in the budget. There's 6 in there now, and we said, well, if they need it for 12 days, we'll double that up.
20 days would be 10 grand, right, at 500 a day?
10, 12, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Was that it though on the capital? Was there one more thing or
There's
no?
one more. The Parks and Rec, 87,000.
Yeah, that's a full F-450. It is a vehicle that they say they do need. They use it for plowing, they use it for a lot of different activities. Could we go?
A year or two.
I think we could go a year.
Okay.
I think we could. If it comes down to that, I think it's something they could really, really use as a replacement vehicle, but if it came down to it and the budget wouldn't allow it,
So what did we take out, Marcia, in your
You took
spreadsheet?
out the 125,
For what?
which was for the mini excavator and trailer.
Yeah,
You had already taken that out, and then
the docks.
the docks had come out.
And
and there
everything else
is-
we left in.
Yeah, there is some money in the docks that, because the 103 was the quote, minus the money that was already in there. So I think it may have been 7,000-ish that is in the capital project still for docks.
Okay. And so we just gotta add 6,000 back to the operating,
right?
right? For
Well,
the
and I-
rental.
And I'd like to leave a little in there if we have to repair these docks, right? Marcia said there's 7,000
Let me
capital
pull up
left,
the
is
exact
that right?
amount.
That should be more than enough to do what we want to do. I'm taking this is a guess.
Yes, sure.
So for the town dock, 6,000 that is in there that we could use for repairs. All right.
Realistically, we'd be spending that this 2024 budget year to get them ready for, Memorial Day.
So you want to take out,
No, I don't wanna take out anything more, right? I wanna add in,
you had talked about we'd taken out the mini excavator, but the 87 is still there for the Ford 450.
thoughts?
So I think when you were looking at the Parks and Rec vehicles, and I don't know where that list was, maybe,
I have it.
they have 8 or 10 of, so, yeah, maybe, I
Right,
don't
your
know.
list, yeah, that one you had.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. If we wanna do this right, in my opinion, we should do the inventory, everything, and then say, okay, we have 100 or whatever the number is. This is how we're going to plan our future buying of these big trucks and big, and we take this as a project after budget, and we do a good job of,
So you're saying delay the 87,000 now, and then we put it into the
1 year.
max 1 year, and then we figure
Yes.
it all out.
and then we figure it out. And then we plan our buying of, these capital purchases are all planned, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the road. We know that we will need to buy 5 of these
Yeah,
in 27.
So to your point, we've already started, I got the list of every single vehicle we have, the year it was made, and I'm going to each department. Okay, what's a reasonable life for this? Is it 10, 15, 18? Now, that takes a while, because we want to check the mileage and talk to everybody, but we'll have that in the next few weeks. It's
Perfect.
not going to do us any good right here tonight, but I think that's a really good idea. And it just guides you
That's it.
in the future. It guides everybody.
Ryan?
Yeah, if they say that they think they can live without it for a year, then I think that's a much better way to manage the business, but,
They're not
That's
saying
good.
that, I'm saying.
yeah, well, you on behalf of the.
Yes.
Them on behalf of, yeah, okay. Then I think that's pretty straightforward.
Well, my only concern though is that we're now looking at two big ticket items that we're pushing down, right?
We're
I mean,
pushing,
are we just gonna get ourselves in a situation, because you know that there's gonna be more apps next year, are we putting ourselves in a situation where we're just continually gonna be pushing things off?
but one of those
for another
asks,
year?
Eileen, if you were at your home and you used a piece of equipment 5 times a year, you buying a $150,000 piece of equipment?
No, but I'm just giving up the, the flatbed truck, if that's something that we know that they're gonna need, what else is coming down? Do they have anything else that we know of for next year that was taken out?
Well, that's the problem with what we've talked about, is we don't have that picture outlook of 5 years down the road, so we don't know. You're right, we're sort of going in blind, that, Eileen, to answer your point.
We do have the 6-wheel dump truck approved, which is 285,000. We have the Ford F-350 approved, the chipper approved. Then we have the police vehicles and there's another vehicle, manager's vehicle, 40,000. So we do have like seven, eight of these approved this year.
I think,
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the list and there's, it's a parity 14, but there's another $45,000 vehicle in Parks and Rec that's been asked for 2 years, on top of the flatbed dump truck. I'm thinking of the replacement Bobcat toolkit was something we'd seen before, but that one looks like maybe it's a new request that was taken out.
And based on their 10-year plan, it looks like there's 2 for 75,000 apiece for next year.
Which I'm sort of getting at a loss on how many trucks does Park and Rec need? I mean, you're talking, if we were to buy one this year and 2 next year, we got a fleet. How many employees do you have in Park and Rec?
They've got 6.
Right, but how many
5.
full-time employees are in Park and Rec?
6, 7, 8, 9, 11 people in total, I think.
So 11 people, we all got $75,000 trucks driving around. We got 2 management
3 of
trucks.
them are management.
We got 2 management cars. We
Yeah.
have 3 dump trucks, all bought in 2 years.
But these guys do work independently. This one will go over, do that project, this one will go do that project. So,
I won't disagree,
Yeah.
but how far are their projects really when you talk about driving a vehicle that's somewhat old? I mean, if these vehicles have 20,000 miles on them after 5 years, they gotta have a lot. Where are they going?
I think,
I could drive around Brookfield every day, all day for less than 10,000 miles a year,
sure.
right? So I mean,
Not so much the mileage, it's, they're using the dump bed. 2 guys are working, throwing stuff in the
Right.
dump bed, doing their project. Another guy's up the street doing something else that you need a truck for.
I think we need to look into it. I really do, that's my opinion, because I don't think these landscapers are buying this type of equipment every year either. I think that they're finding ways to make it work. That's a lot of new vehicles for that many employees.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm in the heat, I think, find out exactly what it is, and let's dig into this and figure out what are we really got ahead of us.
Yeah, so that's the process that I've already started.
I believe that.
How many hours, how many miles on it? What do you think is a reasonable lifetime? Sometimes it's not hours or miles, it's just hard use.
Fair enough.
It depends. Public Works and Parks and Rec probably are the toughest on our vehicles.
Yeah.
I think we should just want to get a better feel, as you said.
Yeah, I think part of what happened is it looks like they bought, of the 5 big dump trucks they have, they bought 4 of them between 2011 and 2015. So we're not really spacing them out, right? They bought 4 all kind of in, and then there's a bunch of years where we didn't buy any. I think we gotta get on a more of
A cycle.
a cycle, so it's not, yeah,
And I think for many years, I mean,
with reserves.
Glenn, when you guys first came on the board, we didn't even discuss
No, fair. It's-
that cycle because everything was so old and falling apart that we said, yeah, you have to replace, well, we can't do everything. Now we're getting to the point where we have vehicles, do we keep them 2 more years? Do we keep them 3 more years? Do we do this? And just begin to get on a cycle.
Well, I think that's right along with Brian and I are saying. We figure it out, what
Yeah.
vehicles are near the end and they go out first. And what one can last 4 years, right? And then that one gets into the 4-year slot,
Yeah.
right? And we just plan it ahead.
Right. But if we're planning whatever, 15 years, then you buy a new one every 3 years, you just get on that cycle.
You get in a cycle, I agree, but we should be able to phase out and phase in,
You have to,
basically, right? I mean,
Just do a big catch-up at once, we can't afford to do a big catch-up at once.
And in the meantime, if something dies or something, we are there, right?
Right.
We're always, they can always come to us, right?
Oh,
So-
we had that, we had to replace the whole transmission on one of the fire trucks, right, remember? For like 32,000,
Yeah.
and the underbody on another one needed work, so
Yeah.
I think if it came to an emergency, I'd come to the board and say, hey,
We need,
here's the problem I have.
Yeah, and Eileen, if it makes you feel any better, it'll be a debt burden next year more than a operating expense burden, because both of these will be, you know, in the borrow
That's a
column.
good point.
Yeah.
all right, so take it out and let's see where, and then, before we forget, do we have, thank you, I just don't wanna lose track of, on this side.
Were we putting the 6K for the docks into operating, or were we leaving it in capital?
It's in capital now, and we
That's
could
right.
spend it out of there, and that way it could be either fiscal year that if they could
I'd
do.
leave it in capital, so it's not an ongoing.
That makes sense. That makes good sense.
All right, so, all right,
So capital, we're done pretty much now, right? So
Think so.
what is capital? Let's run it through for the motion. What is our total amount of capital right now?
6295791,
6295
791.
791. Yep,
The financing is 2358900.
2358900.
Yep,
And then we have in Mary's spreadsheet the grant funding, one-time revenues. Do we have to list that in our motion or not?
I've got it up here, that, let me just update it. 2391500, it should, does that bring us? Oh, that was the wrong number.
2358.
What's the number?
I have
2358.
900 that I have.
That's what I had.
And the total 6295791?
Yes.
62.
Yep.
Yeah, 6295791, yes.
All right, let me change these numbers up here.
And this,
Oh no, I have 6301.
Um, 6295. Do you have 6295791?
yeah. That's what
I
I had.
have, yeah, I have 6301791, so I'm 5,000 off somewhere.
Isn't that putting the 6,000 back into the
Nope.
docks?
That would be cash. All right, so what do you have?
Oh, I have that in, we're using, yeah, okay. I'm good. I'm good.
All right, and then let me just change this one up here. All right, 6295791, of which, $2,358,900 comes from bonding.
Wait a minute. How much comes from bonding?
2358900.
Yep.
One-time revenues didn't change, add 886713.
Yep.
Grant funding for ARPA didn't change at 90,000. Capital from the operating budget didn't change at 2960178.
That's capital non-reoccurring, correct?
Yep,
Wait a minute. Wait, don't go too far.
Yeah.
296.
2960178. If you see 2980178, it's because of that 20,000 going to heart and hypertension, because it's capital and other.
And that's a
Yeah.
total of
3936,891.
Can you show me on the spreadsheet where, how the 6,000 flows through?
I put it under operating,
Can you show me on the spreadsheet?
I can.
Oh, you put it under operating.
Because it's rent,
Oh,
that's where the other rent is.
the
That's
6,000.
not the docks.
Oh, that's,
the-
okay, yeah. There's two dots,
And-
okay,
and
there's two
yes,
6,000.
and the 6,000 for the docks is already,
Prior
let
year.
me pull it back up here.
This is this year's budget, right? The operating budget, 2960170. Is this coming year's, 2024,
178, yes, that's operating budget.
And so the dock money is,
So it's not, it didn't stay in capital advance.
it stayed in capital because that's where it was. So it was an old project from 2021, there was 10,000 in it.
Oh, it's already in there.
Yeah, it was already in, it's
Yeah.
just a leftover
Oh,
that we're gonna utilize, no effect.
oh.
Yeah.
So
that's
So
all
there's
it is.
six, there's 6,000, there's 6,000 in the operating, there's already 6,000 in the fund balance.
No,
6,000
the
for
6,000
truck,
that's already in
6,000
the operating is for the rent.
Rentals.
And then we're adding 6,000 in the operating, because we're going to do
There's two
everything in
different things.
$6,000
Two projects, yep.
increments
But you're right.
But the
still
dock
same.
money was already there.
for 6,000.
Gotcha, gotcha, all right.
So right now, capital's done. So let's go to our final, what's our mill rate increase as of right now?
It's still 387, 6,000 didn't really move it.
Okay. Perfect, all right, just 3.87.
And then the town of,
Huh? What do you have, Brian?
I just wonder, what is the, what's the bottom line again? Oh, I got the other 20K in there, I'm good, I'm tied out.
All right, so,
about May 22, 749. It wasn't enough to change the mill rate at all or the percent.
all right, so then let's go, we've all agreed on the revenue.
Yes.
So revenue, we're fine on, so let's go to expenditures and just walk through it line by line quick to make sure that we all, there's nothing that stands out.
All right.
Before we get into this, is there anyone that had something that stayed out that we wanna bring up before we get into this?
Something I wanted to show, I don't know when the right time is, we could wait and do it towards the end.
We'll do it now,
We can
so we're
now.
prepared when we go through it, that
Okay,
we
it
don't.
doesn't, so, can you bring up the chart, Marcia?
Yep.
Thanks, and you might have to make it so it fits on the screen. So, I took a look at just a 5-year plan to see, the idea of we don't wanna use debt if we can do it and all that, right? So here is this doesn't have the last couple of changes, but it doesn't matter, right? This is not precise.
I agree, yeah, this is,
Okay, so I don't want to keep people's way. So these are the numbers where we were today, right?
Yep.
You still got it, so scroll down, you're gonna have to make it a little bit smaller if you can still. So what I've done is I've just said, let's assume that expenses grow at 4% a year, okay? Then I'll show you how I built the capital plan and the debt plan, but what I basically did is said, using CNR in capital, let's get rid of that as quick as possible, fund that with cash, and then get added bonding as quick as possible. But that's second. And if you scroll down a little bit, that's why I gotta make your numbers small, you can get off those assumptions. The point, I tried to keep it at 4% mill rate increase, that was kind of the, tie it out. So at a 4% mill rate, now the key variable in here is what's gonna happen to the grant list, right? So we've added 22 million this year, we know more is coming, and I don't know the exact number here, but.
Pardon me,
Yeah.
can you email this to Eileen, she can't see this.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
sure.
Thanks. So I've made, this is a somewhat big assumption, but I said, look, by next year it's gonna go to 50, the normal kind of base 20, 25 we get, and then we're gonna get this kicker that we, this 140, we're gonna get some of that. and then
Within the
say-
next 2 years, yes,
we
so
kinda-
you're right,
yeah, so
50/50 is fine.
20 of those
Yeah.
50 is already kind of in there 2025, so we'll get another 70-ish over the next 2 years, and then it kind of gets back down to normal. Okay, so that's a major assumption. If you do that, let's go to the capital tab for a second. I know this one's easier to see. You just scroll up.
And then I'm trying to do it from my
Yep,
phone here.
That's fine. So what this builds is, what was in there, is that we do our paving at $1.5 million, it actually has started increasing into the out years, because it's running out of time. The reserves have grown at 4%, because that's how everything else is growing, right? Then the other, we were 378 this year. What is this? Oh, this is what we're paying out front, right? This is cash. So we were zero cash last year, 378. It goes to 1.4, so an extra $1 million there, and we don't use any excess revenue. Then from a finance perspective, the 2.46 from last meeting, we still got to spend about the same amount next year, but then after that, it goes to 900,000, then you can get to zero in 27, 28. And by the way, if we get extra revenue, whatever, that's a number that's in the hunt of being able to cover. So this says that this model, you follow me?
I follow what you're saying, I wanna.
Surprised?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't understand how we grow from 378 to 4 million and still have the mill rate increase that you're talking about.
It's because, I'll show you,
Okay.
go back to the front page, just because we've hit the curve on the debt.
Ah,
So if you look at the debt service, 8.7, it goes up to 9.1, only 400K, and then it actually starts to go down.
mhm.
And I put in an estimate of the 2.5, so I built there's a debt model in here, and I have to show it to you. So that's what it is, we start turning the corner on the debt. So this says we can get to around 4%, assuming that assumption, which isn't too bad, and get done with using CNR for next year and then getting rid of debt. Now, the one issue is that to cover operating expense, we're still using 1.8 of one-time sources, which is, and then another 600K. So it takes us a little while to get that out. If you didn't want to use that, you'd have to scale back on capital.
But we talked about weaning it too, so that's a wean.
Yeah, it's a
It's a
2 to
wean.
1/8 is not a great wean. I'd like a better wean, but you can't wean off everything. So this says next year you wean a little bit here, you get rid of CNR of the capital. Year after you wean a lot more, and it should you wean a lot more on using bonding, and then by 27, 28 you're fully weaned off everything.
But sort of looking at this, it almost plays into what we talked about, what he talked about. We can get the vehicles right, because they're not that big a
Yeah,
number.
there's
In that
enough-
time frame, there's enough
in
room,
there.
in those numbers, there's enough room, like Nahid said, to get a plan together to get vehicles.
Right, fundamental in here is about 4% growth in BAU capital. Remember, everything else is just stop using one going to the other, but 4% growth is, this thing isn't so tight that 4% doesn't need a little bit of room. So this made me, if you think that's to your liking, to your mind, I think that's pretty good. I think that's a pretty good.
I couldn't
yeah.
challenge any individual assumptions, so
Yeah.
yeah.
But the other question I have is the value of a mill, and I'm sorry if you answered it while I was
Yeah.
sending that to Eileen. It's going up to 175 and 172 for the next 2 years. Down here,
Right.
you're saying the mill rate is the grand list is.
This is the grand list growth, and this is the mill rate growth. So it's even the bottom line.
Steve gave
And
us,
that was based on the
140
information
million.
Greg Dembowski gave
Right.
us as to what he thinks actually is coming on board and is
Right,
going
so
to be built.
incremental
2.5 million
140.
is coming
I
on
think
board in
Says
2
incremental
years.
30 here, another incremental 30
think
here.
it's
It's like 60-ish incremental.
A little high. We
Even
talked
if
about
it's a
this
little
earlier.
high, but I mean,
It's in the- it's in the
Brian's process is
It's
right.
The
idea.
process is
It's
right,
the
directionally,
idea.
absolutely, it's right.
The numbers might change.
We might-
But this is a pretty high level model, right? This isn't,
Right.
and if this isn't quite high enough, then, the weaning gets a little bit slower, but it's pretty quick weaning, from
It's
from
faster
this
than
kind of
I
model,
thought.
yeah. It says, and any way you slice it, as long as these aren't too far off, you can get out 27, 28. So, which I think is pretty good. So if we didn't think that was fast enough, then we might have to go back and talk about capital, so I guess it's kind of.
I think we don't want to choke it either, right, the
I
capital.
agree, yeah,
You
so
know,
I think
like,
this is okay.
Better than I would've thought.
I agree with you, dude.
Experience. All of you guys together.
Well,
it
no,
sounds
well, new set of eyes is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we know by the way, right? Sometime around here, we're gonna be starting to talking about
Right, that's where the
something
room
big,
will be.
right?
Oh,
So
yeah,
There's a lot
that's
more
a-
work. This, we're not gonna go down to 2.95, right?
Right.
You know, something big's
No,
coming in.
no,
around here.
but we
we're
know
making
that.
room
It
for
covers
it.
us.
But we knew this. This is something that's a known, right? That's what,
Knowing that, this gives us kind of a, now we can extend this, but it's,
we talked about this last year, not to this extent.
Yeah.
But we talked about
That's
this,
when,
like,
that's when it starts
we
to
called
pay
it
up.
windows of opportunity
yeah.
last year. I think we were talking about is windows are gonna prop up and we're gonna be able to fit things in.
And we fit things in those windows, right?
Yes, that's, we're looking to fit things in to meet our growth. And the same thing, I think, this tells the story of getting the fleets
This
right,
is-
right?
Right.
We figure out what we need, come up with a plan, because then you can overlay it,
Yep,
right?
That's good
Okay.
stuff.
all right, that's
Good
all.
stuff.
So as I did this, and I
You got comfortable.
got comfortable that.
So then
the
we're
settings
we're
I
good with
should do.
capital right now.
Yeah, now I think, yeah.
We're
Okay,
good,
we'll get on
everybody's
that.
happy.
Great.
Thanks, Marcia.
Thank you. Let's go to expenditure. So again, nobody has anything that stood out in the expenditures. We're just gonna go through it quick and make sure, like, looking at this, the pay raises are all pretty standard. Any wages, there's no bumps other than the one we talked about in the services,
Mhm.
correct? So
That's correct.
these are all standard. Any wages you see is standard. Wait, where are you going? You're going too fast here.
So the selectmen, there were no changes from the submitted budget, which was pretty similar to last year.
There's no major increases. We went through this, so just double
Yeah,
check
yeah,
it.
This is good. This is good.
Check them off.
Yep.
Board of Finance, there's no big changes from the current year. Finance, there were no big changes.
Small numbers, small increases.
Assessor, no big changes. I would say one thing about the assessor, that in looking at, I had thought that we had in this budget $5,000 for that service to find out the license plates. And then we had a tax sale, and why didn't the legal fees wash out? Well, because it wasn't legal fees that they were posting up there. Included in her budget is just the postage for that guy, and so we're posting the offset to revenue. We had hired somebody to go find license plates that were not registered in town, so the cost of theirs up in collections under revenue.
So it's just where you're accounting for it.
Correct,
that's all.
is where we're
Exactly.
accounting for it. Board of Assessment Appeals.
So that's why you're saying the postage is up too, there.
Yeah,
The 17% on the postage line, right?
just a little bit, it's just a small line.
That's all right, agreed. Just,
The Board of Assessment Appeals, nothing, $50 for the wage. Tax collector, nothing significant there. Overtime wages changed a bit. She had dropped them last year, but then she had an unexpected staff turnover.
893 to 1,000, right? I
Yep.
mean, it's irrelevant. Not even, this is what we talked about earlier, Nahid and Brian too, that we've gone through these so many years now that these are
Small.
the $200 here, $200 there.
Legal, we dropped the tax litigation just because we're further away from reval. Made a few other adjustments here just because changes that we've had.
That's right, because last year we still had cases ahead of us for revaluation, right? Now we're,
I think
now
we
we're,
have 4 that are carrying over, and there's a few that came in this year.
okay.
Just some changes in this department that
Go ahead,
we took out the salary survey. We're on doing it on our own right now. IT, the changes that we talked about. Town clerk, Nothing, budget actually went down for non-wages. Registrar, that had a significant change, that is the early voting. And CCM is still pushing to try
We
and
went
get.
through that in a lot of detail.
Yeah.
Right, we're all comfortable
All
there.
right. Land use, planning,
That's a moving piece, right? That
Yep.
the first selectman's still working on. and
that's
it-
building.
Building.
Planning, the difference was the prior land use director wanted to divide up all the different phone bills, but in reality, it was, we can't have 3 people checking in one bill, so we put them back together again. That's the big communications thing there,
That's just housekeeping.
correct? Land use building, that does add, for sporadic wages, although Steve is working on trying to get a
We talked
final
about this.
solution.
This
there.
is
Yeah, we
not,
do-
this
we
is
talked
not
about
a,
this.
an untalked about subject and you're working on it, right?
Yep.
Perfect.
Municipal package, final numbers came in, Conservation Commission, went up a little bit for trees, which is an allowable use, for some of the low SIP money. The low SIP money did increase this year, and, so some of that will go to, trees in the parks, conservation lands. Nothing changed on economic development. They had a minor change that they were talked about at their last meeting, but we can do that in transfers.
We talked about community development, Steve, a while back,
Yeah.
about with the projects coming off, like the one that we're doing for the abatement,
Mm-hmm.
that we could off-charge some of Greg.
Yes.
Did you find out any more about that?
Yeah.
Because his salary's fully loaded into his budget,
His
obviously.
salary is fully loaded into this
And rightfully
budget.
so, I'm just saying, do we find relief on that?
We can, on that particular one, because it's a state grant,
Yep.
it's gonna be, we have to be very careful. We
Okay.
would have to clearly delineate his time. We will have to hire outside experts required to do some of the testing and things, but Greg would be able to do some of the daily monitoring. Were there 6 guys here? Did this
Right.
happen? Did they do what
So
they
we
said?
could delineate a little bit.
So we
maybe in
will
this
be
way.
able to move some of his
All right.
salary
Perfect.
over onto projects.
Yep.
Alright.
And he keeps a timesheet, and he has 2 categories
To
for
the
that.
Right. I'm just saying, if we can, we might as well,
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
I
And
mean,
get the grant to pay for it.
yeah, I mean, but it's rightfully so.
Yeah.
This isn't like a thing.
Oh, no, we're not trying to take anything.
Yeah.
The grants allow you to have management to oversee it.
Okay.
Regional memberships, probate court came in mid, budget season. Animal control has not come in yet, but they had told Steve not more than 3%.
On the lake thing, Nahid and Brian, we're stuck in that. They come up, the towns all get together, and that's a number they all agree on, and you can't get away from that number. That's a
Yeah.
number that's put on you, and that is what it is.
But we have a rep on this authority, right? Just-
There's a board that
Well,
overlooks
yeah,
it,
well,
and they
yeah.
speak with
In
Steve.
this year, Candle Lake Authority's budget went down.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, that's a number though,
No,
that
no,
they come and
it's-
they say each town is gonna pay $127,000.
And it's in our ordinances.
And if you say no, and the other 3 towns say yes, you're paying the bill anyway, you're
Right.
not getting away from it, so. We didn't go over that number, but that's a number that we can't do
It's
anything
not in our
about.
control.
No, it's not.
Unless we lobby all the towns to.
Yeah, well, we have the power of persuasion with them. Remember when they wanted to buy the boat? They wanted to buy 2 boats?
Yeah,
All at once, we said, hey, guys.
but this
be
is their
reasonable.
operating. We held them back on the capital, but this is their annual operating.
This
at
is their
127,
operating, it's pretty slim.
And there are 4 towns? Or are there more?
I'm sorry?
How many towns?
4, I thought.
5.
5, okay.
5 on the lake.
Nothing happening for changes in blight, employee benefits. We talked about the health insurance. We've got the final numbers. Workers' comp, we've got the final numbers.
And those didn't change from the last,
No.
right?
Police, this adds the ARPA people and a half a salary for a new officer, and the costs for half a year for a new officer, part here, part up in employee benefits. Fire, nothing has changed other than what we had talked about.
So they're going up 7%, 10%, right?
Right, that's everything we talked about, they're holding
Yeah.
some still in contingency, that they're gonna meet quarterly.
That's EMS.
EMS, okay, yeah.
Fire, the same thing, we'll still meet quarterly, but nothing in contingency there.
Yeah, we gotta figure it out at quarterly meetings.
Candlewood, we talked about the new turnout gear, and training were the two big items. Fire combined, we didn't talk about, we give $1,500 stipends to the employees that have earned them, the volunteers that have earned them. I think we have the center list, we're waiting for the Candlewood list, it's not due till April. And then firefighters, the service awards program for the volunteers, that they get, $10 a month times the years of service,
So that's only like 57
So-
employees, then 85,000 is only 57 firefighters.
On which are you talking about?
On the stipends of 1,500, so we really only have stipends for 57 people.
Yeah, they have more firefighters, but some of them didn't qualify.
Right, so that's
Right.
really a low number.
That's
That-
a
For
low
what we get, that's a
Right.
So,
low number.
I have a question. With every, like we have, some are going up 12%, some are going up 7%, some 10%. Do we have, way of predicting, same thing here? This is how much we need, and for the next 3 years, 5 years, our budget will only go up 4% or 5%.
We're trying to get there. I think that they've been, and I'll say it, so, they've been sort of isolated a little bit, and Steve and Marcia have worked with them to bring them into house. Our purchasing's now gonna come through the town. The quarterly meetings are gonna bring their staffing more in line with, not in line, but more highlighted to Steve and Marcia
Payments
on
are
a
gonna go
quarterly
through the
basis.
town.
So we are gonna get to that stage. We just had to bring them into the fold this year
Okay.
and start a process.
Yeah,
But
the
I
change in
think,
transparency
right,
is
the change in transparent, not that they were doing anything wrong, but this way we can work together. So to answer your question, we brought them into the fold and we're gonna be there, hopefully. Hopefully next year we're gonna be there. We're gonna be able to sit down and look at these numbers and figure out what are we looking at. But again, what we also talked about earlier was, with all these apartments going in and everything else, we don't know what's ahead of us.
Right.
So how many apartments are going in, Steve?
Right now,
Yeah,
about 440.
so that's gonna put strain on these services.
Even if they're studios and one bedrooms, it's still, you're talking probably 800 to 1,100 people.
Yeah, it's gonna put some strains on the service. That's what we're trying to
We
figure
just
out
have
with
to
the
plan
fire.
for the future, right? We just
Yeah.
have to- Okay, thank you.
With EMS, we're still talking about that, they sent me an email on Friday saying, oh, they didn't realize, they hadn't looked at the schedule that I sent them, that we were cutting their numbers down to 63,000 for all those categories, overtime, sick, and PTO. And what they said is that those, and so I'm a little conflicted, because they just added something to the PTO and sick time columns when we met on Wednesday to say, put this under paramedics, that's for their time covering for the supervisors. Okay, I did. But then they sent me an email on Friday to say that I misunderstood, that is not, that those columns are not coverage times. Those columns are sick time and vacation time, that if these people use their sick time and vacation time, okay, but the question I have is, we've got them in for 2,080 hours. That's not going to increase if they use their vacation and sick time. And I'm wondering if the confusion is when they see their payroll register, it has hours payments for sick time, payments for PTO time, but it also has payments for regular wages. If we were gonna try to match that, and I'm wondering if, and I sent them an email to see, if we were trying to match that, then we would say, oh, you have, let's say, 100 hours of overtime, or of PTO time and sick time combined, then we would have to take the regular hours and subtract 100 hours, because they work 40 hours a week, and if they're saying that is for, if they were to all use it, okay, but we've accounted for that in the total. So we're still talking back and forth on that and trying to find the common understanding here.
You're pretty comfortable that they are doing a 20, 80-hour times rate as opposed to they've already netted out the fact that there's some sick and PTO?
So I can see that they've said this person works 32 hours a week and it's 1,800 something
Okay, good.
hours.
So-
This person works 40 hours a week and it's 2,080. I've multiplied it out. So the only difference would be, and then they use the word liability, that they would have a liability there. Yes, that if people don't use it, there is a liability, and I don't know if they're using the term liability correctly. If people don't use it, there would be a liability, but we're on a cash basis, that we're not going to pay for the liability this year. We'll pay for it when we need, if they were to leave and we pay them out. The only other thing is that, different from the town, they'll pay out PTO and give them more money. It's a use it or lose it. There, that if people don't use it, it sounds like they'll pay that out. That might be something that we need to look at in the budget, but we don't know how much that is. We don't, and like our budget, people get, perfect attendance and things, and we don't put that in the budget.
So where is the comfort level? I mean, are we 50,000 off right now to get us comfortable? Are we gotta add back in 50 to get comfortable? Or do we have a plan B that we can absorb this if we're wrong? And I'm not saying we're, in a weird way, we're wrong, but
No.
this is all new, we've absorbed this. Is 50,000, adding it back in, gonna give us a better comfort zone, or are we gonna just handle it? within the-
I would say we just handle it, that we've got, this year will be the first year in 2024 that we've used up 100% of our contingency because of the changes with the Board of Ed. So we still have a $500,000.
As long as we're together, I'm good. I'm just saying we gotta have a plan B,
Yep.
right? I mean,
I don't think there'll be any changes that we can't adapt and handle within the existing budget.
right, but if we made a calculation based on things we don't, we're gonna cover it, correct? We're all in agreement right now with the MS. In
Yep.
other words, we put them to a number, I think, Marcia, I understood your logic, like the sum of the whole is not equal to all the parts and you move them all in. I followed it totally. But if there's a point where our calculations weren't right, we're gonna come back to this table and make it right, correct? We're all in
Yes,
agreement.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
we also, we're thinking, and it sounds like they might be thinking, now we've gone 6 more months since they calculated this budget, that they may have significant more revenues than are what it's in the
Correct.
budget. And that's all an internal
So we'll look at it again on a
transfer.
quarterly basis, and
That's
if we
all.
start veering off, we're gonna come and sit down with you guys.
They came in with good faith, I wanna go
Yeah.
out with good faith and get it right.
Yep.
From me, I'm sorry, Dan, you too, Brian, Nahid, Mary, Eileen, right, Eileen?
Yep, I'm good.
But
Right.
the point, what is the revenue, or whatever number, I don't know what you call it,
The revenue
Service fees,
is, we're at, the budget is 975, I think.
975, there's, yeah.
Um,
We'll cover, but I think there's.
Brian, I
You were
agree.
saying there's room for more, right? So, yeah.
I
So
think
I'll
we're
stay
learning a
off that
lot.
point and we'll stay off this point, we'll see how it all works out.
Yeah.
But we'll
So
cover.
you're
Plus
learning.
minus, plus
That's
minus.
exactly right. We're gonna go through a learning year.
Yeah.
Right, we've brought them into the fold. We're gonna go through a learning year. They're gonna have quarterly meetings. And in the end, we're gonna get it right.
And we're comfortable, we're gonna stay within that range, that nothing is gonna just, take us out as a town.
We'll manage it, as long as we're all together, we'll
We'll
manage it, as long as we're all on the same
The
page.
risk
Amount
is
of
not
total
that big.
contingency we
Alright.
have, I feel comfortable.
And it ties to the current year, and so I had asked, is there anything unusual in the first 6 months that won't predict the last 6 months? They said no, but in listening to them, it may be a payout of vacation time, but
Okay.
that would be it, that I know of now.
Alright. Keep rolling, we're getting close now.
All right, fire marshal budget went down in all aspects.
Can we say that again?
Emergency management, that's a new department. We did get a notice today that we have $5,000 that we got for their LEOP, which stands
LEOP
for.
grant. It's an LEOP grant, so once you have a paid EMD, you can automatically apply to the state for partial reimbursement. And that's what we did going 2 years back. And it looks like they may give us some money going 2 years back and last year. So it offsets a fair bit of it. And they moved pretty quickly on it because it only went in, 3-4 weeks ago?
March 4th.
Yeah, March 4th.
So that's for the current year. Right now, it was 5,000. So right now, we didn't assume that we were gonna get that next year. Highway department, the only change was we added 6,000 for the today, rent. Facilities, no change. The recycling, no change. Utilities, we know every kilowatt hours now,
And it could still change.
and
We
it could still
understand that.
change. We're waiting for them as soon as they give us a notice that, because it's gone up a little since the different rates as we've gone through, they said to wait till the end of March. But now they're saying as soon as it hits that number, lock it in. And so they've got an alert out, so if it hits the number that we were looking at in the budget, 988, we're locking it in. It adds a cell tower on Vale Road rent for 7 months. Health department has gone down, and that's because of his grants that we were able to move some things. Human services, it went up because the revenue, offsetting revenue went up. Culture and recreation, library stayed mighty flat for the year. Recreation is mostly flat, just the increased costs and a few little things. Parks and grounds, adds a full-time employee and offset by some of the overtime.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yep. Historic District Commission goes up $16.
So I think if we're going to say that our we want to stay around the 4%, going forward, maybe if we can set a predictive way of saying, okay, every department will grow around that. I don't know if that's possible, but
Anything's possible.
instead of the 10, 12, 7, 8 different percentages, because then the more tight, I guess it gets more predictable. I don't know if that's.
No, everything you're saying, once you start to learn the numbers, absolutely. I mean, we've battled since Dan, I, and Mary and Eileen, I started with the macro burst and all of these things. We've been fighting a fire hose a little bit for quite a few years. It's time to get back to basics, absolutely.
The thing you gotta be careful on that is that if you do that, it gives people
Right.
the view that the 4% is
Is
theirs.
Yeah.
And so it's either I need more than 4 or I take 4.
Right.
So it puts pressure on the budget to go up. You gotta be really careful about
Sure.
that. If you're gonna do it, you gotta do it like
So,
2, and
right.
then have a couple percent.
But the budget process starts with Steve and Marcia going to every department head,
We
sitting
start
down with them.
0.
Exactly.
We say, we want you to come in as last
That's
year
less.
and then justify any increase over that, besides the salary increase. And that's
And the
worked
salary
pretty
increase will
well.
happen next year, right? The
Yeah.
union.
In the next 18 months, 18 to 24 months, we have to negotiate all of the union contracts.
But I think next year the union agreements go up 2.5%.
Yeah.
This year was 2.25%. But what we generally do is at the beginning of the year, we look at what we know. Like last year, we knew that health insurance would go up more than, a normal percent. Fuel was going up more than a normal percent. And so what does that mean for the rest of the budgets? And when we take those outliers, that every year we say, salaries, outliers, everything else has got to be as flat as possible.
That's fine.
And I wasn't saying that 4% is a target, right? I was just saying that was an estimate.
Right.
Right.
But
I
in
think the
in
target
terms
should
of,
be
in terms
basically
of
a good
planning, I
story.
agree.
Yeah.
The planning
For
should be the
analysis
expenses
purposes.
lower, as
Yeah.
low as you can,
Right.
yes.
When is the salary contract end?
The first one ends in about 17 months from now. We'll start renegotiating about 12 months
So-
from now.
October of '25?
Yeah. So what we've done in the past when we have that problem, we use contingency.
I think there's one that ends at June 30th of,
I thought it was 26. No?
of
25?
I think one was 25 and two were 26 that you made me.
Okay,
that
we'll
up.
So
double
that's
check
next
that.
year's budget.
Yes.
It's next year.
Not this one that we're working
But
on.
we'll
Next-
do the same thing we did
Afterwards, we
last
can
time
look
with
that up.
Yeah,
contingency.
we did a labor contingency
Yeah,
line.
right.
So we added in a contingency line that we kept second, Brian, and we added in a labor contingency line.
I just don't know if we need to do
Just
that next year or not.
contingency.
That's what I'm
Okay,
asking.
we can still do contingency,
Yep.
fair enough, I hear you.
Yep, okay.
I understand.
Arts Commission hasn't changed in years. Remember to go to their art festival next weekend. Youth Commission is relatively new, that they've just had a budget for a few years here. Contingency went up with the EMS and then it went back down again, but it's still at
So
455,000.
what do we have specifically identified for contingency? I know special ed, the salary, risk in the schools, and the EMS actuals. What else is specifically identified that we know is gonna come up, or we expect to come up?
Salary,
No, yeah, special ed, transportation, and the 119 for EMS.
Right.
minus 104, so we're
Minus
down to
104.
15
Oh,
for
yeah, so,
EMS.
right.
But those are the only
We haven't
two.
There's
identified
the
anything,
only
we
ones, no.
didn't put anything else in there, or we didn't say,
I don't think
Just
so.
trying to run as close to real as possible.
yeah.
That number was, it's a percent of total budget or something like
It
that?
starts out to be 5% of the, or 0.5% of the
One
budget.
half.
Is that where we're at?
I can tell you.
Yeah. 455,000 on 80 million? Yeah.
Percent, that's 40.5.
What?
0.5
We rounded
to-
up to 1, so 0.52, there you go. Okay.
Because
and
we
that
put in
comes-
more on the EMS and only took out 104, right? The EMS had more in it,
Yeah.
so you added a little.
And
on
that
top of the
comes
fund.
from the fund balance policy that calls for that. Board of Ed expenditures that,
This is small dollars. If there's a policy that says we should be at 0.5, should we put contingency at 0.5? Should we just true it up?
well, because EMS has added to that. If we took E EMS,
So it's 0.5% plus
Plus,
a known risk of EMS. Okay, that's fair.
um, education that Steve cut 575,000, and then we looked at where they stood, and you cut approximately another 150,000.
What was their original budget?
53,624,635. Debt service, we haven't changed, but it went up, interest went down a little. Bond principal went up, this is our first year on one of the payments. And then short-term financing are just copier leases.
Did you put something in here for the fact that we'll bond this year, not the bond issuance cost, but the fact that we may have to pay interest?
So the way they always do it is, because they work with all governments in Connecticut, and they always add the interest, so the next
So
year.
the first year, there's no payment.
Yeah, the
on
next year we
bonds.
might pay 18 months of interest instead. And the only time it's been affected is when we've been able to refinance bonds, but in this market, we're not, and it hasn't cost us money, it saved us money, but in this market, we're not refinancing. CNR funds, thank you for your email on that. That you're paying 268,000 more of cash, and that was from the last meeting. That's everything with expenditures.
So what is the total town operations numbers?
268.
All right.
Oh, the change was 268,960, yeah. So the town operations are going up 3.7, Board of Ed 499, debt service 1396, cash for capital and other is 30%.
Will we be able to get the fund to go up to 15% or no? I'm trying to remember.
The general fund.
Yeah, will we be able to?
No, where we kept we added money to keep the percent flat.
To keep it flat?
Yeah.
Okay. So 14.75?
Yeah, approximately flat, yeah. I mean,
Is everybody pretty comfortable right now? All right, I'm gonna make a motion that we take a 5-minute recess. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Marcia, turn it off while we get some housekeeping numbers in place before we make our motion.
All right. You're back.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We were just getting our numbers right so we can make a motion. I will make that motion. I'll make a motion that the Board of Finance and approve and recommend to a town meeting and referendum the following operating budget for fiscal year 2024-2025. On the town operations side, we have $22,749,144. On the school operations side, we have $52,896,597. Our debt service is $8,779,678. Capital expenditures of $2,980,178 for a total of $87,405,597. As outlined and described in the operating budget being submitted to the town clerk, this budget represents an increase of 3.87 over the mill rate of the prior fiscal year and anticipates a mill rate of 27.9 for the fiscal year of 2024-2025. Do I have a second?
Second.
I think we've all discussed this. Eileen, you there? You have any points?
Yep.
All right,
Good.
no discussion. Let's take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. I'm going to make a second motion that the Board of Finance approve and recommend to town meeting and referendum on the amount not to exceed $6,295,791 for the capital budget for fiscal year 2024-2025, as outlined and described in the capital budget being submitted to the town clerk, and to approve the financing in the amount not to exceed these amounts with the issuance of bonds and/or temporary notes in accordance with the standard bonding and borrowing resolution for said appropriation not to exceed $2,358,900. The balance of this will come from the following sources: year-end 2024 one-time revenues of $886,713, grant funding, which was ARPA, of $90,000, capital from the operating budget of $2,960,178, for a total of $3,936,891, as bonded as spoken up above, of the $2,358,900. Total capital spending in this budget is $6,295,791. Do I have a second?
Second.
I think we're good with discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. That concludes the budget season. Hold on, Steve. What?
One question. Capital from operating budget is 2960 on the bottom and 2980 on the top.
20,000, it's capital and other, 20,000
All right,
going.
all right, I just get a little.
Nope.
Been warmed up on that question once before.
Then, since we're all done, oh, wait, before we go, our meeting is what, April
Third.
3rd?
The capital, I mean, yes, the
Mhm.
public hearing is April 3rd.
So you're available?
Yes, I am.
So Marcia, are you gonna be able to work with Dan like you did in prior years, with Steve as well?
Yes,
I think, and Nahid and Brian, Dan has done this the past few years, and he's really communicated what we wanna say. And so if it's all good, and Dan will do it.
Karen, can I work on you with the presentation a little bit also?
That'd be great, Eileen.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, everybody good? Then I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye.